MAELLE. MAELLE never knew she was Alicia, not for a single moment of her entire life inside the canvas. Orphaned at 3 when her painted parents were gommaged, passed from foster family to foster family, rejected each time for being rebellious and unconventional, shy, solitary, distrustful, someone who never felt like she belonged anywhere, until Gustave took her in. She joins Expedition 33 not to save Lumiere, not because the gommage is coming for her, but because the expedition is her chance to see something beyond the city that never felt like home, to forge her own identity for the first time. That's the cruelty of her story. She spent her whole life searching for an identity, then found one. Built something real. Real friendships, real bonds, a real sense of who she was, then found out none of it was what she thought. She is the youngest daughter of the Dessendre family. She entered this world to complete a mission she can't remember. Her real family is waiting for her outside a canvas she has chosen as home. Her attachment to the friends she found in Lumiere mirrors exactly what her mother did, choosing a painted world over the grief waiting in the real one. Alicia survived a fire, forgot everything, grew up alone, found a family, lost them, found them again, then had to choose between the world that made her and the world that raised her. 2 names, 1 person, no easy answer. Verso. The painted Verso is everything the real one wasn't. Contrary to his real counterpart, the painted Verso is described as mature, athletic, determined, a man shaped by a century of survival, loss, and impossible choices. Aline painted him from memory, an idealized version of the son she lost. But 100 years of living inside a collapsing world turned the idealization into something real. He learned the truth early, that he was a copy, that the real Verso was dead, that everything he was, his name, his face, his family, belonged to someone else. Most people would collapse under that. He built a life anyway. He befriended Eski and Monaco, fell in love with a fellow expeditioner named Julie, watched her die by his own hand after she discovered his immortality, and believed he had betrayed everyone. Returned to Lumiere, left again, spent decades working with expedition after expedition trying to find someone strong enough to end it. He didn't want to survive. He wanted to free his mother, free the real Verso's soul. And finally, after 100 years of being a copy of a dead boy, stop existing. He tracked Expedition 33, not because he believed in it, but because he had run out of other options. The real Verso died in seconds, saving someone he loved. The painted one spent a century trying to finish what that death started. Renoir. The first real villain you meet isn't the paintress, it's him. Painted Renoir ambushes Expedition 33 on the day of their arrival on the continent, slaughtering almost the entire crew and sending the few survivors scattering. No warning, no monologue, just a massacre. Every named character introduced in the prologue with personalities and ambitions, most of them gone before the game properly begins. He spends the entire story hunting the survivors, charismatic yet ruthless, an obsessively protective father haunted by the grief of losing Verso and the fear of losing his painted family. He massacres expeditions out of a twisted kindness to preserve the canvas and the paintress, seeing their destruction as a mercy. That detail is what makes him genuinely disturbing. He doesn't think he's the villain. He thinks he's the only one willing to do what needs to be done to protect his family. His last words before being destroyed proclaim his love for the Dessendre family. He killed dozens of people for love, and meant every word of it. Mel describes him as Aline's unflattering portrait of her husband. The real Renoir is much warmer. The monster the expedition fought for the entire game was never who Renoir actually was, just who Aline's grief painted him to be. CLEA. Out of all the Dessendre children, CLEA was the only one to follow in her parents' footsteps as a painter, a prodigious talent that rivaled even her mother's. While Verso chose music and Alicia chose writing, CLEA chose power. She believed she was the worthy successor to the Dessendre legacy, and she was probably right. Then one fire took everything from her. After Verso was killed, her mother consumed herself in grief and abandoned her duties. Her father chased after her into the canvas. Her youngest sister was left disfigured. The family collapsed in every direction simultaneously. CLEA, the eldest, the most capable, the one who never needed anyone, was left holding everything alone. He took over as leader of the painters, launched a counter-offensive against the writers who killed her brother, fought a war by herself while her parents tore their world apart from the inside. While occupied with this personal vendetta, her parents became trapped in the canvas as the result of their stalemate. She won her war outside. She lost her family anyway, so she entered the canvas herself, not out of grief like her mother, not out of desperation like her father, out of strategy. She had a plan to end it. Painted CLEA. Aline painted her as a substitute daughter before the fracture, given the same powers as the rest of the family, a mirror of the real CLEA. Elegant, cold, impossibly skilled, she was subdued and repainted, stripped of her identity, forced to serve her counterpart's plan, spending decades creating the Nevrons that infested every corner of the continent, every creature the expedition fought, every death the Nevrons caused. All of it came from her hands, not by choice, by design. When the expedition finally reaches her prison, she recognizes Verso, but her corrupted state prevents her from joining them. She summons her creations to fight instead, and ultimately she chooses death as her escape from a life twisted beyond repair. The real CLEA sacrificed her painted self to save her family. The painted CLEA paid that price without ever being asked. ALICIA. ALICIA survived the fire that killed her brother. VERSO died saving her. She walked out of that burning manor carrying scars, physical and otherwise, that never left. The youngest Dessendre, the one her mother couldn't face afterward. Aline grew angry at her young daughter, partially responsible through her connections to the writers, and couldn't bring herself to face her. The mother who built an entire world out of grief for her dead son never made room in that grief for the daughter who survived. CLEA eventually sent ALICIA into the canvas to help their father pull Aline out. One task: go in, help end it, come back. She never came back. The conflict between her parents was so strong that she was overwhelmed by Aline's chroma, losing her memories and being reborn inside the canvas as a completely different person. The painted version of ALICIA that remained, a distorted and tragic figure painted by Aline out of resentment, covered in fire scars, wearing a mask, condemned to a colorless and painful life. She wrote a letter titled A Life to Dream that all but revealed the truth of the world, and asked VERSO to decide whether MAELLE ever received it. She was tired. She wanted it to end. She got her wish. VERSO Dessendre. VERSO Dessendre was the middle child of Aline and Renoir. While his family pushed painting, he chose music instead. A skilled pianist and guitarist who lied to his parents about his enthusiasm so as not to disappoint them. A boy who painted an entire world as a child, then quietly put the brush down and picked up a guitar. As a child, he filled his canvas with everything he loved. An alternate version of Paris he called Lumière. Creatures that resembled his dog, characters that reminded him of his sister ALICIA. He built a world the way children build things, without agenda, without strategy. Just joy and imagination and love for the people around him. He never knew that world would outlive him. On December 33, 1905, the writers attacked the Dessendre manor and set it on fire. VERSO died, saving his younger sister ALICIA. That's the entire life of the most important person in the story. A boy who made music instead of paintings, who built a world he never intended to be permanent, who died for his little sister without hesitation. He never appears in the game, not once, just a fragment of his soul, left behind in the canvas the night he painted it as a child, quietly keeping the world alive from somewhere nobody can reach him. Every expedition, every gamage, every death, every grief that consumed his family for decades, all of it began and ended with one boy who just wanted to play music. Renoir Dessendre. The real Renoir spent 67 years as a faceless creature inside a canvas that was killing him slowly, trying to save a wife who didn't want to be saved. After Aline retreated into the canvas, following VERSO's death, Renoir entered after her to pull her out before prolonged exposure killed her. Their clash caused the fracture, and the two became locked in a stalemate that lasted decades. Trapped underneath the monolith, he used his painting abilities to slip through the cracks in an ethereal form, the Curator. A tall, faceless being who quietly helped Expedition 33 upgrade their weapons and abilities throughout the entire journey. The man who caused the gamage was also the man helping them end it. Both things simultaneously true. He is a loving and protective father, determined, empathetic, remorseful, haunted by survivors' guilt, willing to make cruel choices for love but joyless in destruction. He didn't want to destroy the canvas. He wanted his family back, his wife, his daughter, the chance to stand together at his son's grave and finally grieve properly. In the end, he trusted his daughter to eventually come home, knowing she was lying to him, and chose hope over certainty. A father who spent 67 years inside a dying world fighting for people who kept choosing the canvas over him. He left anyway, still hoping. The Paintress. Everyone else in this family made a choice. CLEA chose war, Renoir chose force, VERSO chose sacrifice, ALICIA chose to forget. Even MAELLE chose her painted world over the real one. Aline made a different choice. She chose to stop existing in reality entirely. She was the most powerful painter in existence, head of the Painters' Council, the woman who taught her entire family everything they knew about their abilities, the foundation everything else stood on. And when VERSO died, she left. Not physically, just in every way that mattered. From the very beginning of the game, she is visible on the horizon, a gray colossus hunched in front of the monolith, silently weeping before painting a new number every year. Even Sophie, facing her own gamage, looks at her and says, she looks sad. She was never trying to kill anyone. The gamage was Renoir's weapon, his attempt to drain her power and force her out. She reduced its effects as much as she could. The numbers weren't a death sentence. They were a warning, the only protection she could still offer. Decades inside the canvas destroyed her mind, delusional, paranoid, unable to distinguish Expedition 33 from another trap. By the time you reach her, she no longer fully knows where she is. She was wrong about almost everything by the end, but the grief that started it, the love that made her build an entire world rather than face losing him, that was never wrong. Just impossible to carry alone for that long. After everything, the fracture, the gommage, 67 years of war, Aline and Renoir reconcile. He holds her at Verso's grave. The world she built is gone, but the husband she fought for decades is standing beside her, and the real Verso can finally rest. Every expedition, every gommage, every death in this entire story. Not power, not war, not destiny, just grief that nobody knew how to carry.